welcome to this week's show. This week all about the sister of Anne of Cleves, another wife of Henry VIII. Anne of Cleves' sister, yeah. The fourth in line she was, and as the story goes, a painting was painted of Anne of Cleves, and Henry VIII was so impressed that he said bring her over. But before that, you see, there was a painting of her sister Gertrude, well, two paintings in fact, and he was even more impressed, and he said, blimey, Thomas Cromwell, his chief minister, what a magnificent pair of legs. I'm most impressed. He said, yes, sire, it's quite impressive, all right. He said, yes, I wouldn't mind seeing more of her. Can that be arranged, Thomas? He said, certainly can, sir. We can get a painting of the rest of her body, if you like. I said, yes, that'd be nice. So they did. They did a painting of the rest of her body, and she had, indeed, a very pretty face. In fact, that's what Henry said. He said, wow, she's not just a pretty face, is she? She's also a pair of beautiful legs. And we can put them together, Thomas, and we can see what she really looks like altogether. He said, by the way, I'm so impressed, I think you should bring her over. It's not so much fun just staring at a painting all the time. Why, I might even get to talk to her. Painting doesn't seem to say much. So, they brought her over from the German Lutheran states to England, and he said, yes, you are quite a pretty thing, and I can see that the painter, he had a bit of artistic license as well. But anyway, yes, you'll do. He said, by the way, Thomas, just quietly, can you bring the painter over? I'd like to have a word with him. And, yeah, so he said, listen, Gertrude, what's the story anyway with the whole thing of being, you know, two paintings and all that, your legs and your head? That's a little odd, isn't it? She said, sire, I quite like the idea with being separated. He said, well, that's sort of something we could have in common, I guess. He said, what do you mean, though, being separated? She said, oh, I know all about Anne of Boleyn. She lost her head, didn't she? He said, yes. Carry on. She said, well, I kind of had this fascination with being beheaded. He said, really? She said, I do, sire. Anyway, apparently one day she was crawling around on the floor, and Henry walked in and he said, what are you doing? And she started tugging on his trouser legs, and she said, sire, I'm just creeping around. He said, I can see that, but why? She said, because I'm kind of creepy. He said, I can tell that. You were going on about having your head cut off the other day. And another time he walked in the parlour, and she was cutting up cheese. And he said, well, that's a rather odd thing to do, isn't it? She said, really? I love cheese. I'm rather fond of it. He said, well, I can see that, but what I mean is that you're using an axe. We don't use axes to chop cheese up in England. She said, well, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to get used to the axe. I like the idea of the axe. I like the feel of it and everything. And he said, look, I've had enough of this woman. Thomas, we need to get rid of her. He said, look, we can't get rid of her. Perhaps we should give her what she wants. Perhaps we should chop her head off. He said, we can't do that. I'm going to get a terrible reputation. He said, sire, you already have a terrible reputation. He said, yes, I forgot. He said, okay, we'll chop her head off. So they arranged a public beheading, and the crowds were all there, and they were baying for her. And she came out in the little wagon, and she was going, cut my head off, please, I can't wait. I'm rather excited about it all. And the crowd looked at her and go, hey, she's not supposed to say that. What's she going on about? She's supposed to be frightened. She's supposed to be terrified. She's supposed to be a victim. And so they said, hey, we're not going to watch this. This is ridiculous. Someone who wants their head cut off. And so they agreed. The crowd said, no, get rid of her. And they turned the card around and they basically went back. And it never happened because no one wanted to see it. So she went back to the palace. And there she was back at the palace. And Henry said, well, this is rather boring, isn't it? Someone who actually wants their head cut off. Perhaps you can find for me, Thomas, someone who doesn't want their head cut off, and then we could perhaps consider it. So he said, well, what about a sister? She's rather beautiful. And so they got a painting of Anne of Cleves from the German Lutheran states, sent over, and he was most impressed. And he said, well, so long as it's a different artist this time, Thomas. He said, it certainly is, sir. There's an artist that I handpicked myself from the crowd at the beheading the other day, you see. He said, yes, really? He said, was it the man who was standing at the front with a cabbage in his hand? He said, well, it was, actually. How did you guess? He said, because the cabbage was actually what he used to paint, wasn't it? He put a cabbage on a stick, and then he would put a face on it and everything like that. He said, well, that's true. But he's improved a bit, you know. But anyway, that's this week's show, all about the sister of Anne of Cleves, the fourth wife of Henry VIII. Actually, I just want to mention, check out Punakana TV, a good friend of mine on YouTube, and if you have a look at her channel, check out the Meet Franklin video. Anyway, that's this week's show. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your comments. And thanks for subscribing. Keep subscribing. And rate my video. Thanks a lot. And I'll see you again next week. Cheers. Bye.